Welcome to another episode of Stampin' Saturday. Let's dive in. So this week's episode will be another semi, if I could say, mixed media episode. Let's dive into the things that I used. I used this Heidi Swap Magic Medium. I guess this would be the third brand because I talked about the Faber-Castell. I talked about the Fun Stamper's Journey Medium. And now and I talked about the Liquid Text. That's the name of the brand. That's the Michael's brand, the Liquid Text medium. And so this is the fourth medium that I have dibble and dabbled in, which is the Heidi Swap. And to me, it's basically a glorified brand of Mod Podge, if that makes any sense. Okay. But once again, my all-time favorite is the Faber-Castell. All right. I use my Fun Stamper's Journey Black Licorice. And I use Tim Tea Dye Distress ink. This is the only ink I didn't mix two together this time, and I want to show you the effect. All right, I did this Fun Stamper's Journey postage stamp. Love that stamp. I use Stephanie postage stamp. I used her envelope. I used this Lawn Fawn mailbox. Totally obsessed with that. Love it. Tim Holtz, I used the stars. And then I used this Stampers Anonymous. I used the telegram and the letter stamp. Love this stamp set, and it came with a stencil. And then I used some scrap pieces from this Ideology paper pad. All right, you all, you ready to dive in? Let me show you what I created for this episode. Here we go. What do you think? I love it. I love. So, I wanted to demonstrate how you could take a few items, not a lot of items, because I realized from a lot of comments and conversations that I have with some of my subscribers that they don't know where to start with mixed media. Want to do mixed media, but do not know where to start. And mixed media, for some people, just the title kind of shakes them up. And it did me at first. Where do you start? Because there's so much going on. So I wanted to sit down and do a layout with the bare basics, because that's how I taught myself how to do mixed media. I started off with the basics and I built myself up to where I am now. Still got a long way to go, but each time I'm getting better and better and better. All right, so here we go. I use this Distress Tea Dye. Now, on the last this layout, I used 2 inks and blended them together. Okay. This one, I use 1 ink, but I still got a blended effect. So what did I do? I took the ink pad and I basically laid the ink pad to the paper and just went up and down, up and down, up and down. Now, this page layout is 4 sheets glued together on both sides to make it more sturdy, because remember, I told you this paper is very thin. This is not mixed media paper. Okay, it's not mixed media paper. So I took 4 of these sheets and I adhered them together and let them dry. And because I did that, you get a few little lumps and bumps, which was great, because once I took the ink pad and adhered it up and down and covered the whole sheet, it gave me the indentions. Where you see the dark parts, that's where the indentions was. And so when the ink pad went on top of it, it made a very worn, distressed look, right? After I did that, then I took my distress foam and I took some ink and I went over top. So that gives me a two-tone blended effect. Does that make sense? So what am I saying? You can start with just one ink. You don't have to start with 2, 3, 4, 5. You can start with one ink. It's all in how you lay the ink down. All right, then after I did that, I started to tear the strips of my paper. I inked those edges with the black licorice ink. Okay, so I wanted to show that you could use different types of ink. This mixed media layout, in my opinion, I would consider this a dry mixed media layout because I'm not using any glaze on top. I'm not going to use any matte medium on top or anything like that because I wanted to keep it a vintage look. Okay, so with that, you can use different inks. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Okay, so I set those pieces aside and I began to layer my stamping. So in the background, I use various stamps and just stamp randomly through the paper. All over the paper, all the different stamps that I wanted to use, I did those randomly. The first stamp that I used in this whole layout is my Fun Stamper's Journey stamp. This is the first stamp that I used. Now I did first and second generation with this stamp. What am I saying? Some spots is the first generation. Some spots is the second generation. I like the way that look because you want some of it to be in the background and you want some of it to come forward. Okay, so that's what you will use the first and second generation stamping for. After I used this stamp, I moved on and I began to use after I moved on, which stamp did I use? Oh, okay, here you go. I began to use the telegram stamp. Okay, so I stamped that in different places. Now, after I used the telegram stamp, that's when I began to lay down my strips of paper. I laid down the strips of paper using the matte medium gel by Heidi Swapp. Laid that down. Once I laid that down, then I went back over with this letter stamp and I began to stamp that in different places. Because as you can see, I have some of it on top of the paper. I have some of it under the paper. So I laid these strips down first before I did my envelopes. Does that make sense? All right. The next step I did was I came in with the strip of stars and I put those in various places throughout the paper. As you can see, I stamped on top of the paper as well as off of the strips of paper. All right. Then I came back and I laid down my location strips, and then I put my mailbox, and then I came in with my envelopes. I laid down my envelopes. Okay, I stamped them out on some strips of paper, cut them out real quick, very simple, laid those down, and then lastly, I came back with the Heidi Swapp postage stamp and just stamped that throughout the page. And if you can see, some of the stamps is on top of the paper, some of the stamps is just on the background of the paper. Okay, and then the last step of what I did was I stamped my postal, and I'm loving those Tim Holtz phone stamps. I think this might become one of my fave, you all. I'm going to keep using it, but I really love the impression that they give. So I stamped that as my title of this layout, and then I went around and just inked my edges to put a frame around this layout. So that's basically what I did. I wanted to demonstrate and show you all that you could start off simple. Now, are there some other things that I could have done to this? Yes, it was. I could have used several inks to blend my background. I could have used the matte medium on top, okay, and then I could have put my gel, my glaze on top of that to seal everything in and to give it a gloss look. I could have went in and I could have used some splatters. So it's different things that you can use. I wanted to just show a basic, simple layout. All you need is your stamps, some paper, and some adhesive, which is the matte medium, and you can move forward. I hope you all enjoyed this episode of Stampin' Saturday. Please leave me a comment. Tell me what you think. Excuse me, you all. And until next time, keep creating.